Hello, Matt here, and if you're familiar with my music, and indeed this YouTube channel, you will know that I like to use a lot of distortion in my music. But we also know that when you're working with distortion, it's very easy just to send things into square wave mush, lose all of the definition and just have which is fine some of the times. But some of the times you want to retain that energy and that power when you're working with distortion, and to make sure that you've still got some sonic clarity within your mix. Now, I've used loads of distortion modules. I've got quite a number of them in my rack here, and recently I've been having a lot of fun with this one by Sonocurrent, which is the M T2D. It's dual mono, or you can use it in a kind of stereo configuration, I guess, or you can drive one side into the other. And it's got some really cool techniques and tricks up its sleeve that allows you to work with distortion in that way to make sure that things aren't getting too mushy. Just running through what it has on the front here, you've got a bias input, so you can kind of really drive that input. You've got a drive to add more distortion, so that's separate from the bias. You have a tilt, which at 12 o'clock it's not really doing anything. You turn it to the right, it takes away low frequencies and boosts the top end, and it does the opposite over on the left. And then you have a dry wet mix, you have CV control for that, and you've also got feedback, so this creates, I guess, like a feedback loop of the sound going out and back in to the module. You've also got this switch here to add even more voltage to it if you want, and there's also a CV for the bias, which doesn't have any attenuation. So let's patch something up and let's have a quick listen to how it sounds. Now I'm going to use the Metropolis for sequencing just for ease, and the 4MS ensemble oscillator, my favorite oscillator actually, and one of the reasons is just because it's got such great wave folding in it, and it's got some awesome low end in it already. I want to take that into the Belgrade. Before I do, and I know the Belgrade does have a level attenuation on the input there, before I do that, I'm actually going to take the output and I'm just going to run it into volume, because I don't know, sometimes I find that when you attenuate the level going into a filter from an oscillator, you can get a wider range of sound, of timbre if you like, as opposed to just going straight out the oscillator straight into the filter. Yeah, I think I'll just go into this VCA here, but I'm just going to be using it again for volume control after the filter, after the Belgrade. Go into the input there, so that way I can control the amount going after the filter into the distortion. I've also got the bias that I can play around with there. So let's take the output of that left hand side and go into the input there. So yeah, as I'm just going to turn the input going down into the Belgrade about halfway-ish. I do like the Belgrade because you can use filter shapes with like two peaks. So let's have a listen to what's going on here a little bit. So as I mentioned, let's go. So that's dry. That's just the Belgrade. And the 4MS. So let's add that in. So with the tilt, we can get more highs or more lows. Bring that feedback in. Yeah, you can make it really scream. And I found you can, you can kind of tune that feedback using the tilt a little bit. Because when there's no signal present, that's essentially the feedback, right? That's your feedback loop going on. Turn the feedback up, it's there. So you can, if you think about it, if you want to use that kind of feedback pulsating in your music, you can tune it to whatever this is being played. I don't actually know what it is, what these notes are, but using your ear. Somewhere around there. So that means if I was to add the envelope into my VCA here, every time the VCA goes down, we'll get that feedback come out. So it's a great way of getting more kind of tones. So let's use the Quadra to create some envelopes, and let's send that a trigger from what shall I use? Maybe I'll use the steppy. You hear? So every time. So let's tune that. So I'm using the feedback in conjunction with the sequence that's happening from here. Almost creates part of the sequence, you see what I mean? That's it dry. That's it with the M2TD. Now if we turn this on, the voltage we go into crazy land. Somewhere there, which we'll explore in a minute. Cool. Let's maybe bring in a kick drum just to add a bit of context here. Let's add in some hi-hats from DFAM. Some kick. Just for a bit of context. Now working with that Belgrade, you can really shape what's going into distortion, and I think that's a really important point. It's about what's going into the distortion and also the level that it's going into the distortion. So let's just get rid of the hi-hats and kicks a second. So as an example, if we turn down the level going in to the filter from the oscillator, just start choking the sound a little bit. And again, the sound may be going into this from the VCA. You get a different range. See, it's not all about just ramming the sound as loud as you can from one module into another, gain staging. I might add a bit of compression here from the Otto boom. Just to gel it together a bit. Nice. You can really make this thing scream. Okay, that sounds cool. Now the thing about the ensemble oscillator is that you've got two outputs, and what I'm going to do is take that second output and I'm going to go into the other side of the M2D. In fact, actually, I could combine. I could go in to the VCA here and take the mix out, and now we've got both outputs going in to the MT2D, and I can control and mix the amount of levels going into those. So if we just listen now, so that's output B we're listening to. Just lovely. Love this oscillator. And then output A, bit of a different sound, bit softer. I could combine those. But instead of doing that, let's take the second output and run it in to the second side and just treat it a bit differently. Let's just listen first to, so the output B going through the second side. Let's have a listen to that. Just choose that. Got that really chewy sound going on. Nice. What I want to do is add the other sound back, so I'm going to add the other side in. So that's output B going through the second side, and then output A going through the first side, adding those together. Wow. Now I'm getting the best of both worlds, and it's all coming from one oscillator, and this side's going through the Belgrade, and it's about combining. Yeah, because now we've got over that problem where if I just go down here, one of the oscillators is still poking through enough to give us some clarity down there. Such a cool module. Brilliant. Now we do have some CV control as well over the bias and over the mix. And I've got a little sequencer here. So I'm going to sequence the mix from dry to wet. So on some notes, the mix is going up, which is another way of controlling your distortion. Let's add back the second side. Maybe we sequence the mix on that side as well. So, gonna need a longer cable. Let's sequence the mix from that side. Add them together. Wicked. And we've also got bias control as well, so we can also, we can modulate the bias on both those channels in the same way. So, just taking the output A, there's a little sequence I've got going on in there, modulation track. And again, it's all kind of adding variation. Everything's coming from one oscillator though. You've probably seen that I've been turning this root dial quite a lot on the 4MS, and it's basically allows you to change the octaves. Just finding those sweet spots. Just going to take the bias one out. Chewy and nice. What if I take output B and run it into the VCA? So I'm created another feedback loop. So, with this voltage switch, it just adds even more to the point. It just breaks it up even more. Let's starve it a little bit. Listen to that. Let's go all the way up. Nice. If you was to layer that as well with another oscillator now that isn't distorted, it's just going to sound awesome together. So of course you can have full-on wet, but this plays really nicely by also just like having it 50-50. You know, somewhere like there. We mix in that feedback. Let's take the feedback out. Let's go the voltage lower. Feels like it just gives us a bit more headroom with the lower voltage. Really nice. Let's bring back the hi-hats. DFAM's great for hi-hats. So maybe we want to sequence that mix again. Now we've got quite a lot of feedback going on it, and it's just over 50% mix. Now it's just tapping on that squeal, but we're retaining that low end. Remember, you can tune that kind of feedback using this tilt. There we go. Now it's more in line with the melody. It's a bit more musical. Cool. Let's take the second output and let's put it in. So now you've got one left and one right. Quite extremes. But let's try and dial them in a bit so they're quite similar. If you listen to this on headphones, you'll hear it's quite similar sort of sound, but a bit of movement going on because they're not quite right. One of them's got modulation, for example, on the mix. Let's modulate the right-hand side mix as well. So now we're kind of using it in stereo mode. Stereo distortion. We're still using this, yeah, we are, aren't we? The Quadra. Let's take that out, and instead I'm going to use the Quadra on the Warp. Maybe use it on this one, a bit slower. Nice. So the Quadra is just opening that warp. Now I'd also probably run some reverb from this, some kind of effects as well would be nice. So let's just take that. Let's take out the hi-hats for now and just put in some. Nice. Now, I can also, because I'm sending one side from the VCA, I can kind of use the VCA as a mixer. I could actually send the hi-hats into one side as well. For a bit of that. Obviously it's only one side. Okay, let's try something different. Let's send the Percussion by Eric Synths into the Sonocurrent. So what I'll do is I'll just bring the kick drum in on the left-hand channel here first. Let's just turn that up. So this is completely dry. Let's bring the drive to about 12 o'clock and turn up the mix. It's nice, it really retains that low end, which is really important on like a distorted kick drum. You still want that kind of low end energy in there. Let's increase the drive a bit more. Nice. Let's just go full blast. So even full blast, you're still retaining that energy in the low end. It's nice, you can get a lot just playing around with the mix and the drive amounts. Let's bring in some of the feedback. And again, we can tune that really using the tilt. So now we've got more of that bite of the transient of the kick drum by having it about 1, 2 o'clock there. It's because it's really emphasizing that. you want to emphasize more the low end, go around there. And of course, if you bring the feedback all the way up, I'm going to start just getting the screaming coming in. Which you might want, you know, tune that to your song. Just back off the mix there. That's really nice and chunky. I like that. Okay, let's bring in the other channel, which has got the hi-hats and other percussion. Let's take the kick drum out. Turn up the mix. Some drive. I've got the bias all the way up, by the way, on both the channels. Let's bring in some of the feedback on that. Feedback's all the way up now. Because we're not full on mix, we're not getting the screaming yet. It starts to get introduced about 3 o'clock. Bring in the kick. Really use that tilt to bring out those hi-hats on the second channel, or tuck them away. That's cool. Let's try lengthen that kick out. Nice. Maybe some effects in there. Try a different kit. Maybe a different pattern. Even though we're going really full on extreme there, we're not into square wave mush. We're retaining, you know, that power, the energy, the transients are still there. Let's go fully dry. So much you can get out of this. Using those tilts there to kind of take things away or add things like screams back. If you don't go so far. Take out the hi-hats. So now they're just a low rumble. Back in, almost using it kind of like as a EQ shaping mixer. Cool. And one last thing I wanted to try is let's take the outputs, take the inputs out. So now we're just using this. And if we do this, we go fully wet. You've got really nice kind of square wave, distorted bass line kind of voice there, and multi-sample that, stick it into Bitwig or Ableton or any sampler really. The Bitbox Micro's good for this, and generate a multi-sample of that and sequence that, because the low end is just tremendous. So you could have one side like that really sort of screeching, just sat there just for a bit of top end emphasis, and then you can use one side for really loads of low end, and then that sequenced could sound really, really cool. Just another idea about how you can use this and taking advantage of that feedback path that's within the module. So there you go, the Sonocurrent MT2D. It's a really cool module, I must admit, and for someone who uses distortion quite a lot, this one really connects with me. I think that ability to really shape the sound without it turning into too much mush, the ability to play around with the feedback and to tune that kind of feedback and sit it within your mix is really interesting. The fact that it's stereo, you can run it in stereo, or you can have it in dual mono, or indeed send one side into another, or in fact have nothing running into it at all, is pretty cool. Yeah, it's also, like I said at the beginning of this video, it's one of those distortion modules that really allows you to shape sound without it turning into just a big square wave of mushy distortion, because it allows you to retain the power and the energy from your bass line or your drums or whatever it is that you're sending through it, while adding that distortion character. And I think you could do some really interesting stuff where you play around with more intricate envelope shapes. So whenever the kick drum's happening, maybe then you turn up the wet mix or something like that on your snares, on your hi-hats, or invert it. Have a play around with it. It's a really, really interesting module, and I think it's well thought out. Now, if you've enjoyed this video, do please hit the like and subscribe. All of your support is really, really appreciated on this channel. And indeed, if you'd like to get your hands on the samples for this and all of my music, including some that are not on any of the streaming platforms, including remixes, hour-long ambient sessions, sample packs and more, I'll be adding it all to a special MATTHS cloud drive, which you'll be able to access via my Patreon. And over the years, I've also been doing one-to-one tuition with people, and that includes doing things like taking your music out and playing live with it, Eurorack modular consultation, remixing, mastering, Bitwig, Ableton, the grid, crafting different sounds, or anything else that you need to talk about in terms of your music, your production, and moving yourself forward. Then you can also take advantage of some of the other tiers on my Patreon, where you can have one-to-one sessions with me over the web, and that can be monthly, weekly, bi-weekly. There's lots of different options for you to choose from. So head over there and see if any of them take your fancy, and maybe you and I will connect and work together in some capacity. Thanks everyone, more videos coming soon.